There's a big and definite push from the government and central bank towards affordable housing in the country. And that push comes simply because the BJP's vision of a pucca house for all Indians by 2022 cannot be fulfilled without creating enough stock of homes which cost 50 lakh rupees and less. Today on the show, we bring you the views of India's leading policy makers and corporate leaders on whether the first few steps taken by our policy makers are in the right direction, what's still missing and what can be fixed right away to meet the gap of 20 million affordable homes. We've got with us Jagan Shah, Director, National Urban Affairs Institute here in the Delhi studio, Mr. M. Ramachandran, former Secretary, Ministry of Urban Development, Mr. P.S. Jaykumar, MD, VBHC, joins us from Mumbai, Madhusudan Menon, Chairman, Micro Housing Finance Corporation, MHFC, also from our Mumbai studio, and Chintan Patel, Director, Real Estate Practice, EY from Mumbai. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming in. I know there's just so much to discuss when it comes to discussing affordable housing, but I think I would like to start, for our viewers' sake, with each point from the budget and ask for you to analyze the pros and cons, because a lot of buzz, a lot of excitement, but where will it all lead to is the big question. So the first one, a sum of rupees 4,000 crore has been allocated to National Housing Bank to increase the flow of cheaper credit for affordable housing. Mr. Ramachandran, you've been there when these dockets are made. What do you think of this 4,000 crore? Just a beginning and a very, very tiny sum still?
No, I would think it's a very good beginning. Whether the sum is tiny or not, it depends upon how it is actually consumed by the NHB. I understand for last year, whatever provision was made, that has been fully taken care of. So NHB may be able to do it, but the larger question is, NHB is one entity which would be undertaking this task. Right. The policy would be driven by the Ministry of Urban Development, which now has housing and poverty alleviation also as part of its portfolio. So there will be very many initiatives which the ministry itself will have to take. So I'm left little wondering as to how the coordination between the two would happen, because Housing Bank happens to be anchored in the Ministry of Finance.
Right.
So there are these ministry terrains, and how Housing Bank is going to work and where are they going to work? What about the prioritization of cities where more work needs to be done? And of course, the larger question would be how those sections of society who figure large in the portfolio of homeless or houseless in the country, the EWS, economically weaker sections, plus the LIG put together, which is something close to 95-96% of the shortage,
total shortage
of
yes.
18.78 million worked out. So how is the focus going to be on these, and what is the facilitative measure which the state would be providing? I mean, it's not only the central government, the states which will also have to provide. How are they going to do this? So there is a whole lot of preparation to be done, and there is a whole lot of work to be done to bring the states also on board. Also about the larger issue of, I suppose, 4,000 gets linked with the Housing for All goal of 2022.
Right.
So there has to be a certain phasing. We are already in 14, and 14 will get over in no time.
In no time,
so,
right.
So there is not much time left. So there is a combination of factors, plus I suppose sometime later you would take up this issue of whether the banks would be able to provide this type of additional amount required in a better position, or the housing finance companies.
Okay, fair enough. Jagan Shah, your reaction to 4,000 crores and the big question that he's raised, it's not just the money allocation, but the coordination between Housing Ministry, NHB, Ministry of Finance and the state governments. All of them need to come together for this money to be dispersed in the right manner, isn't it?
No, that's absolutely right. In fact, I second what Dr. Ramachandran just said, that this is going to flag one of the key problems which afflicts the urban sector in our country, which is the need for coordination between ministries, between departments. And one of the key ingredients in all of this is land. And land itself is both in short supply, it is encumbered in most places. If you look at the record of only some of the states in terms of the repeal of the Land Ceiling Act, almost every single piece of land is under litigation.
Right.
So how do you actually free up the land required to build these units? And if you go down the way of actually looking at in situ rehabilitation of slums, where a lot of your so-called beneficiary, your target population is actually residing, then that in itself is another Pandora's box, which opens up many issues to do with coordination, legal issues and so on. So it will require, in the kind of short time frame that we're looking at, if by the 75th anniversary of our independence we have to provide housing for all, then it requires a massive effort, not just from the banks themselves, but from every single functioning organ, so to speak, of the government to make this happen. We have to look at transportation issues, we have to look at livelihood issues, you have to look at connectivities with sanitation, water supply. It's an enormous task.
It's an enormous task. All right. So let me come to you, Mr. Jaikumar. What do you think? I mean, the budget provisions as a whole, there also seems to be something interesting for developers now, which is opening up of FDI. At least there is an intention to do that by exempting minimum built-up area and capital requirements to avail FDI for projects that commit at least 30% of its area for low-cost affordable housing. What do you make of that provision?
Manisha, is like this. For the last 4 years, I've been walking down the corridors of Delhi trying to get this FDI regulation changed. And to me, it's a matter of immense satisfaction. In the first budget, the finance minister has addressed this quite unequivocally. I think it's going to open up a fair amount of funding from impact funds, from development financial institutions, and from the traditional private equity firms. So
you're really
in a sense,
positive that
I'm quite
foreign money
buoyant
will
about
flow
it.
in? You're fairly
I would
positive,
think so.
Mr. Jaikumar?
Yes, I would say so, but I wouldn't say the whole thing is built around the change in regulation. There is, as others have mentioned, a lot of things that ought to get done with the ecosystem so that the money, people find the market a little bit more receptive. But given the fact this government has been in place for the last 90 days or so, I think these are good steps. Now, coming down specifically to your comment relating to the 4,000 crores from the National Housing Bank, one must also add 8,000 crores that has been allocated to rural housing, and a lot of locations that are in the peri-urban area technically come under the definition of rural housing. Okay. The moot point to ask is somebody like Madhusedan Menon, hey, are you getting enough refinance because you're fully focused on low-cost housing? Or is this money largely going to fund the upper end of the property? And so if the 12,000 crores is sharply targeted towards institutions that are focused solely on or predominantly on low-cost housing, that will make a difference.
All right. So I think the big question to ask Madhusudan is that, with RBI freeing up or making extra provisions for affordable homes and redefining it to 65 lakh value home in big cities and 50 lakh value homes in tier 2 cities, the whole parameter or what really is affordable homes itself has got become debatable, hasn't it? So when we are talking about the National Housing Bank refinancing coming to whether it's financial institutions or banks, where do you think that money should be going?
Yeah, there are actually a complex set of issues that we are trying to deal with out here, but the immense capital that is required to even attempt to solve this problem is like a multiple of this 4,000 or 6,000 or 8,000 crores that we were talking about. So if you really look at what happened last year to what's happening this year, so there was 6,000 crores that was allocated to rural housing finance last year, which has gone to 8,000 crores this year, and 4,000 crores that was allocated to urban housing, which has moved into something that's defined as mission for low-cost housing this year. So we are not really clear. The devil is, of course, in the details and in the implementation, of course. But we believe that there is a shortage of homes in practically every segment in this society today. Even the middle class and the upper middle class onwards, there is a shortage of homes. So any capital that flows in towards the creation of new homes should, of course, be encouraged. But the real shortage, the bigger shortage and the bigger challenges remain at the bottom of the pyramid in terms of how these people are identified, how the credit is evaluated, and how credit flows faster and faster to the lower end of the segments that we are talking about. So, in fact, we believe that the recent change in the RBI definition of what is low-cost or affordable homes being pushed upwards is actually will encourage banks to finance the higher end than the lower end. And because that is obviously an easier segment to assess and to serve than the lower segment that we are talking about. So the couple of things that I would say could have been done is to at least give a higher priority to to loans which are less than 10 lakhs or even maybe even 15 lakhs, and say that they will have a double the impact in terms of your PSL calculations or qualifications. There are various ways that policy can be still nuanced to make sure that the velocity of credit that flows to the bottom is faster.
But Madhusudan, I'm going to stay with you. Hasn't, even without RBI changing the priority lending norms and making affordable housing as high as homes up to 65 lakh rupees, the flow of finance for the low income group or EWS segment was never easy, was it?
It's got many challenges, Manisha, including the fact of defining who is EWS and really making sure that the limited supply that's created for the EWS actually goes to the EWS. Because as you know, there's a lot of leakage in the limited supply that comes into play. A lot of it is actually, I wouldn't say cornered, but at least a lot of it disappears to higher income because, let's not say higher income, but at least lower middle class or upper middle class people who also need homes. And there's not enough supply there. So they find a 10 lakh home, 15 lakh home more affordable and they can easily buy it. Okay. Whereas the lower income people who need it are kind of, I think, probably self-excluding themselves from accessing the credit, and anyway it's not freely available to them.
All right, so we'll come to that. We'll segment the market a little bit later and then look at the problems of each of these. I mean, whether it's sub 15 lakhs, then 15 to 30, and then above 30, going right up to 65 lakhs. Chintan, so your comment on the kind of monies which this budget has allocated to what is termed as affordable housing, and your own summary of whether just taking away the capitalization requirements for affordable housing and freeing up FDI will have an impact or not?
Sure. From I think the amount, it's while as Madhusudan also said, the amount 4,000, 6,000, 8,000 crore, you can put that. I think the important part is to see that there is a start, right? Affordable housing is the need of the hour. And today where we stand, if we look at the shortage, which is close to 19 million as what was there in 2012 numbers, and 90% of that sits in the bottom of the pyramid, which is EWS LIG. So the government at least looking at that and starting to allocate money is important. So that's really the first piece of it. The second leg is the FDI, opening up of the FDI. Like Mr. Jaikumar said, FDI is also an important thing. They've said that from 50,000 square meters, which was the requirement for traditional housing, for affordable housing, that can go down to 20,000 square meters. And for developments where 30% of the area is dedicated for affordable housing, all those restrictions do not apply, is a big step. Because a lot of the times people want to get into affordable housing, but the restrictions in terms of the area may preclude them from being part of it. Especially, again, the second leg part of it is the slum rehab getting part of CSR. Given the new law that is making a certain percentage prerequisite for companies to invest into CSR, and adding slum rehab to that is a big push, especially for cities like Mumbai, where a larger portion of new development will come in form of CSR. So when we look at the initiatives of opening up of FDI, CSR, the National Housing Bank, all of that is a definite move in the right direction, and hopefully that should improve the housing, especially given that urbanization is going up and up with every passing day.
All right, so we're going to come back in just a moment. I think we've got a thumbs up mostly for all of these budget provisions. What we really need to examine after a short break is what are the challenges. So yes, it's a big start, it's a good start, but then there's a huge gap, as Dr. Ramachandran also pointed out, and other panelists have also raised questions of finally for that stock of affordable housing to be created. We'll also dissect and of course divide affordable housing into those meant for low economic group and EWS or economically weaker segments, and the ones which are for low middle income and middle India. We'll be back. We're looking at affordable housing and of course the vision to create pucca housing for every Indian by 2022.